I never wanted trouble with my neighbors. I really didn't. All I wanted was a quiet place at the edge of town. A little cabin, a wooden bridge over a slow creek, and the kind of silence you can actually hear. When I bought the land, that bridge came with it, a narrow span of old timber and steel built decades ago by the previous owner. It wasn't much to look at, but it was mine. My connection to the main road, my lifeline. Then the HOA happened. At first, it was little things, polite letters about lawn length, mailbox color, community harmony. I laughed them off. My place technically sat inside their boundary, but the bridge meant I barely saw anyone. Still, it didn't take long before Karen showed up. If you've ever lived under an HOA, you know the type. Perfect posture, clipboard glued to her arm, smile sharp enough to slice paper. She introduced herself as the HOA president, which she said like a royal title. "Mr. Carter," she told me, "your bridge is a shared access route, you know. We'll be using it for deliveries and maintenance vehicles." I blinked. "You mean my bridge? The one on my property?" She gave me that polite but condescending smile. Well, it's for the good of the community. That's how it began. A week later, I heard the rumble. Not cars, not pickups, but cement trucks. 2 of them, heavy, roaring like beasts, grinding across my bridge. The wood groaned, metal cables screamed. I ran outside, yelling, waving my arms, but the drivers just shrugged. "Orders from the HOA," they said. That night, I checked the bridge supports with a flashlight. Cracks, new ones, fresh splits in the beams. I felt my jaw tighten. They'd treat my bridge like a public road until it collapsed. The next morning, I called the HOA office. Karen answered. "Karen, your trucks are destroying my bridge," I said. "Mr. Carter," she replied sweetly, "our engineering team reviewed your structure. It meets community safety standards. Engineering team? They were landscapers." I tried reason. Then I tried warnings. Finally, I sent a certified letter. Legal notice, property boundaries, liability clause, everything I could find in the law books. The reply came a week later. An HOA notice taped to my door. Unauthorized obstruction of community access route. They were fining me. That's when I realized this wasn't incompetence. It was control. I started documenting everything. Photos, dates, weights of vehicles, even installed a motion sensor camera. I thought maybe, just maybe, when they saw the evidence, they'd stop. Instead, Karen doubled down. Now there were 3 trucks a week. Cement mixers, gravel haulers, even a rented excavator one afternoon. My bridge sounded like it was screaming every time one of them crossed. One evening, I was patching a beam when I heard her voice again. "Mr. Carter!" She was standing by the creek, arms crossed. "You're not authorized to make structural changes without HOA approval." I stared down at her. "You mean fixing the damage you caused?" She smiled. "We all have to follow the rules." That's when something inside me clicked. Not anger, not yet. Just a cold clarity. They wanted to play by rules? Fine. I'd learn every single one of them. Over the next week, I dug through county records, property plats, flood maps. I learned that my bridge was built before the HOA even existed, meaning it wasn't under their jurisdiction. I found engineering notes, permits, even the original deed, which described that bridge as a private crossing maintained solely by the Carter estate. When I realized what that meant, I laughed, quietly, but with relief. They'd been trespassing the whole time, but I didn't rush to confront them. No, that's what they expected. Instead, I waited, observed, because if I was going to fight Karen, it wasn't going to be loud. It was going to be smart. Then came the day the first truck actually broke the bridge. I heard the crack before I saw it. A long groan followed by a splash. One rear wheel dropped through a rotten plank. The truck lurched, half-tilted, dripping cement into the creek. The driver jumped out, cursing. I ran over, camera rolling. By the time the tow crew arrived, half the neighborhood had gathered. Karen showed up last, furious. "This is exactly why we need control over that bridge," she snapped. I said, calm as ice. "Funny, you just made my point for me." That night I stayed up until dawn drafting my plan. If the HOA wanted a war over my bridge, they were going to get one. The morning after that truck collapsed, part of my bridge, Karen filed an official violation notice. According to her, I had failed to maintain a shared community structure to HOA safety standards. That's when I knew she wasn't just being stubborn, she was trying to take it. I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I got to work. I rebuilt that section of the bridge, stronger, reinforced with hidden steel braces. To anyone looking, it seemed like a simple repair. But underneath, I added something extra. A series of motion-triggered pressure sensors linked to a tiny camera hidden under the railing. Every time a heavy vehicle crossed, the camera recorded weight, direction, and time. Proof undeniable. A week later, like clockwork, another cement truck rolled up. Same driver. Same order. I watched from the porch as he eased across, the planks groaning again. The bridge held perfectly, but my cameras caught everything. Karen arrived 10 minutes later, clipboard in hand. "See, it's fine," she said, almost smug. "Yeah," I said quietly. "It's holding better than ever." That night, I downloaded the footage and labeled it Exhibit A. For the next 3 weeks, they kept at it. Trucks, deliveries, even construction crews who said they were expanding drainage access for a tennis court project the HOA had approved. My sensors logged it all. By the end of the month, I had timestamps, vehicle IDs, weights, and photos of Karen standing right beside every violation. Then I set the trap. I invited the HOA board to a courtesy inspection. I told them I was finally willing to cooperate, which, to Karen, sounded like victory. She arrived with 2 board members, a county officer she'd invited to observe, and a grin that said she thought she'd already won. "Mr. Carter," she began. "Thank you for finally seeing reason," I smiled. "Oh, I see reason just fine. Would you like to step inside?" We walked into my small office. On the wall hung framed property maps, permits, and one large printed sign that read, "Private Bridge, Carter Easement." Karen barely glanced at it. "Let's get this over with," she said, opening her folder. "The HOA board has decided to assume maintenance responsibility for this structure due to its community use. You'll be reimbursed a fair amount for transfer of control." I looked at her, then slowly turned to the county officer. "Is that even legal?" He shrugged. "It depends on the documentation." Perfect. I pressed a button on my laptop and the TV flickered on, showing the first video. The truck, the broken plank, the cement spill, the chaos. Then the second video. Then the third. Karen's smile froze. "These," I said, "are recordings of HOA-directed vehicles crossing private property without permission. Each instance logged, verified, and documented under state trespass law." Her jaw clenched. "You can't prove we ordered those deliveries." "Oh, but I can," I said, clicking again. The screen changed. Scanned copies of HOA work orders, all with her signature. The county officer leaned forward. "That's pretty solid evidence, ma'am," the board members started whispering. One of them, Thomas, finally said, "Karen, did you authorize these without a vote?" She glared at him. "Of course I did." "Someone had to take responsibility." "Responsibility," I said, "for damaging private property, falsifying claims, and violating environmental code?" The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Karen's voice trembled slightly. You think this little presentation will hold up in court?" I smiled. "I don't think." "I know." I reached into a folder and slid a copy of my lawyer's letter across the table. "This is a notice of intent to file for property damages, harassment, and defamation. I'll also be forwarding the footage to the Department of Transportation. They take unauthorized use of federally mapped structures very seriously." Thomas's face went pale. "Federally mapped?" I nodded. "You didn't know? That creek, Nan, and everything above it is under federal watershed jurisdiction, meaning your HOA rules stop 3 feet before my bridge starts." The officer coughed into his hand, trying not to smile. "He's right. I've seen this before." Karen's color drained. You can't do this." "I already did." The rest of the board filed out in silence. Karen stood there, shaking, trying to collect her papers. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "Maybe," I said. "But I'll sleep fine tonight." She stormed out. For the first time in months, my property was quiet again. No trucks, no noise, no angry letters. But I knew Karen wasn't done. People like her never are. Sure enough, a week later, I got a summons. She'd filed against me, claiming the bridge was a community access way. Perfect, because now everything was on record. I wasn't going to run from her lawsuit. I was going to bury it with facts. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, but the tension inside felt big enough to crush steel. Karen sat at the plaintiff's table, perfectly composed in a sharp red blazer, papers stacked neatly, smile rehearsed. Her lawyer, a tall, polished man who looked like he practiced smirking, whispered something and she nodded like she was ready for war. My attorney, Lisa, leaned toward me. "Remember," she said softly, "we don't have to destroy her. Just show the truth," I nodded. "The truth will handle the rest." The judge entered and everyone stood. When he sat, Karen's lawyer launched right in, polished, professional, and poisonous. "Your Honor," he began, "this case concerns a dangerous, unlicensed structure built on shared HOA property. My client, Mrs. Peterson, has acted only out of concern for public safety." He made it sound noble, like she was protecting children instead of driving trucks through my creek. Lisa rose slowly when it was our turn. "Your Honor, the structure in question is fully licensed under both state and federal guidelines. My client, Mr. Carter, has maintained ownership records since 2006, including permits that predate the HOA itself." Karen's lawyer laughed quietly, just loud enough for the room to hear. "Those documents are likely outdated, perhaps even fabricated." Lisa didn't flinch. She walked to the evidence table, lifted a sealed folder, and handed it to the judge. "Exhibit A, the original federal permit. Exhibit B, renewal confirmation from the Department of Transportation, verified digitally 6 months ago." The courtroom fell silent. Karen shifted in her chair, her smile trembling for the first time. The judge looked over the papers, brow furrowing. "And you're telling me these were filed before the HOA was established?" "Yes, Your Honor," Lisa said. "Which means this property, including the bridge and creek crossing, was never part of HOA jurisdiction." A few muffled whispers rippled through the crowd. Karen's lawyer cleared his throat. "Even so, Your Honor, the bridge has been used by HOA contractors for community purposes. That implies shared ownership through common use." Lisa stepped forward. "Not if those contractors were trespassing." The judge's eyes narrowed. "Trespassing?" Lisa smiled. "If I may, Exhibit C." She clicked a button, and the screen at the front of the courtroom lit up. Video footage filled the display, cement trucks crossing my bridge one after another. Karen standing on the creek bank, clipboard in hand, directing them like she was running a movie set. The audience gasped. Lisa's voice stayed calm. "These recordings were taken over 3 weeks. Each truck weighed in excess of the posted 2-ton limit. Each delivery was approved by Mrs. Peterson personally." Karen's lawyer jumped up. "Objection. Context, Your Honor." "Overruled," the judge said. "Continue." Karen's face turned bright red. Lisa didn't stop. "These repeated violations caused significant structural damage, resulting in thousands of dollars in repair costs. My client documented everything, including signatures authorizing the unauthorized work orders." The judge glanced at Karen. "Is that true, Mrs. Peterson?" Karen stammered. I was following board procedure." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "Funny you say that, because according to HOA meeting minutes, which we subpoenaed, no vote ever took place." Karen's lawyer opened his mouth, but Lisa wasn't done. "And while Mrs. Peterson was spending HOA funds on legal threats against my client, she also diverted nearly $40,000 from community maintenance to fund this case." The courtroom murmured loudly. Karen's lawyer's voice cracked. "Your Honor, we object to—" The judge raised a hand. "You can object later. Right now, I want to see the accounting records." Lisa handed them over. "Exhibit D." The judge flipped through the pages, his expression darkening. When he looked up, the room had gone completely silent. "Mrs. Peterson," he said slowly, "these numbers don't lie. You used HOA funds without approval. You falsified boundary maps. You authorized illegal use of private property. Karen's lawyer slumped. Your Honor, my client was misinformed. Enough, the judge said sharply. This case isn't about misinformation. It's about misuse of authority. Karen turned pale, eyes darting around like she was searching for a lifeline. The judge continued. The court finds in favor of the defendant, Mr. Carter. The HOA's claims are dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, this matter will be referred for review of potential document. Tampering and misuse of community funds. The gavel struck hard. The sound echoed through the room like a thunderclap. Karen's lawyer sank into his chair. Karen froze, her eyes glassy, her hands trembling. Lisa exhaled softly. That, she whispered, was checkmate. I didn't gloat. I didn't even smile. I just gathered my papers, stood, and said quietly, Thank you, Your Honor. As we left, the audience murmured, some laughing softly, others shaking their heads. Karen stayed seated long after the room emptied, staring at the judge's bench like it had betrayed her. Outside, sunlight hit my face for the first time in what felt like months. Lisa nudged me. So what now? I looked back at the courthouse doors. Oh, it's not over yet. She tilted her head. You still have something else, don't you? I smiled. Yeah, the twist. Because what nobody in that courtroom knew, not Karen, not her lawyer, not even the judge, was that I'd found something deeper buried in those survey files. Something about the creek itself, the land beneath it, and the rights that came with it. The real end of this story wasn't in that courtroom, it was waiting just beyond the bridge.